Hello, my name is Stephanie McManus. I am the Finance Director for the Town of Westwood. I'm giving this presentation with the goal of providing an overview of the town's current finances, as well as a preview of the 15 financial articles you'll be asked to vote on at the annual town meeting in May. This information is included in the town meeting warrant book that is distributed to all households by the Finance and Warrant Commission and posted on the town's website. There are also a number of financial presentations previously recorded during select board meetings related to the budget that are available to residents to view on the town's website. I want to thank Westwood Media Center for their assistance in making this presentation and having it available to view in advance of town meeting. Before getting into the FY27 budget, I want to take a step back and provide some context around how municipal finance works. The goal of municipal finance is to responsibly manage public funds in a way that supports excellent town services while protecting taxpayer dollars. At a high level, the finance team is responsible for the full financial life cycle of the town, from developing the budget and collecting revenue to daily management of operations, reporting, and long-term debt and capital planning. Importantly, we do not operate in a vacuum. All municipal finances in Massachusetts are governed by the Department of Revenue. Each year, we also undergo an independent audit and produce our annual comprehensive financial report, which provides a detailed look at the town's financial position and compliance. And finally, Westwood maintains a AAA credit rating from Standard & Poor's, which reflects strong financial management and allows us to borrow at the most favorable rates. This rating saves residents money by allowing us to borrow at lower interest rates. All of these pieces together form the framework that supports how we build and manage the town's budget. Building on that framework, I also want to highlight the strong financial position that Westwood operates from. This strength is driven by a few key practices. We operate under clear financial policies that guide decision-making, and we take a conservative approach to budgeting, balancing current needs while planning ahead. We also maintain strong financial reporting and internal controls to ensure transparency and accountability. Our reserve strategy provides stability and flexibility, and we approach debt management thoughtfully, supporting capital needs while maintaining affordability. Together, these practices contribute to Westwood's strong financial position, reflected in our healthy reserves and AAA credit rating. While we have a strong financial foundation, the budget itself is developed through a structured and collaborative process. The town's budget is ultimately approved at town meeting, but getting there involves ongoing coordination between town staff, the select board, and the Finance and Warrant Commission, and the community. The development of the annual budget is an important part of the continuing planning process that begins each year in August and runs all the way through town meeting. The Select Board proposes a budget which is then reviewed at Finance and Warrant Commission public hearings. After community review and input, that budget then goes to town meeting for approval for the following fiscal year. That ongoing process ultimately leads to a key question: how do we balance all of the town's financial priorities each year? Our approach to budgeting is comprehensive. We're not just building an operating budget, we're balancing multiple needs at the same time to maintain overall financial stability. That includes funding day-to-day services through the operating budget, making capital investments in our buildings and infrastructure, maintaining reserves for flexibility, and planning for long-term obligations like debt and OPEB. At the same time, we're constantly weighing competing priorities. The goal is to maintain the level of services that residents expect while also managing the impact on taxpayers. And importantly, every budget decision looks beyond the current year, prioritizing long-term sustainability over short-term balance. As these priorities are balanced each year, the FY27 budget is being shaped by several key cost pressures. First, there is continued growth in fixed costs, particularly health insurance and retirement, which are contractual and largely outside of local control. There are also operating pressures across the organization. While special education and related transportation costs remain significant drivers, rising costs are also seen in areas such as solid waste and recycling, technology and software systems, and increased demand for public safety services. At the same time, revenue growth is limited. Property taxes are constrained by Proposition 2.5, and revenue increases do not always keep pace with rising costs. In response, the FY27 budget is built largely at a level service budget, with contractual increases absorbed within the existing structure and a continued focus on maintaining core services with minimal disruption. While costs continue to increase, the ability to respond on the revenue side is more limited, so it is important to understand how the town's budget is funded. Like most suburban communities, Westwood relies heavily on property taxes, which make up about 80% of total revenue. The remaining revenue comes from a mix of state aid, local receipts, enterprise funds such as sewer, and free cash. This is a fairly typical revenue structure, but it does create a challenging financial model. Because the primary revenue source is property taxes, and those are constrained by Proposition 2.5, revenue growth is relatively limited and does not always keep pace with rising costs. That lack of flexibility on the revenue side is what makes balancing the budget each year particularly challenging. That limited flexibility is largely driven by Proposition 2.5, which governs how property taxes can grow each year in Massachusetts. At a high level, Proposition 2.5 limits the total amount of property tax revenue a community can raise annually. The levy increase can be by 2.5% over the prior year, along with an adjustment for new growth from development. Importantly, this limit applies to the total levy, not individual tax bills, but it does create a structural constraint on how quickly revenue can grow. The table shown here provides a snapshot of how that translates to the average residential tax bill in Westwood. There are tools available to increase revenue beyond that limit. A general override can provide additional funding for ongoing operating needs, while a debt exclusion is used to fund specific capital projects and is temporary in nature. Both require approval at town meeting and at the ballot. These tools allow towns to invest in essential services and infrastructure while maintaining transparency and local voter control. So, while costs may be increasing at a faster pace, revenue growth is largely fixed within this framework, which is a key factor in how the FY27 budget was developed. In addition to property taxes, the town uses a variety of dedicated funding sources to support capital articles without over-reliance on the operating budget. Importantly, these funding sources have no direct impact on taxes. The two primary sources are free cash and meals and hotel tax. These funds have consistently been used for capital purposes and must be appropriated by town meeting. There are also several dedicated funding sources that can support both operating and capital needs, including ambulance receipts, sewer retained earnings, and certain trust funds, each of which have specific restrictions on how the funds may be used. Collectively, these mechanisms enable the town to make key capital investments while preserving taxpayer relief and long-term financial health. It's also important to note that the FY27 budget does not include any borrowing articles for capital projects. Additional information on the town's debt and borrowing strategy is included at the end of this presentation and will also be available in the annual warrant book distributed to all households. Looking now at one of those dedicated funding sources in detail, free cash. It's important to understand what it is and how it supports the town's financial planning. Free cash is essentially the municipal equivalent of a corporation's retained earnings. It represents the portion of the previous year's surplus, unspent funds, and higher than anticipated revenues that have been certified by the state as available for appropriation. Free cash plays an important role in maintaining financial flexibility. Since it is not a guaranteed or reoccurring source of revenue, free cash is often used to fund one-time expenses such as capital purchases, emergency or unforeseen expenditures, specific warrant articles, or to build reserves. This approach helps avoid placing additional pressure on the tax levy and ensures that ongoing operations are supported by stable, recurring revenue sources. This next slide outlines how free cash is being allocated at the 2026 annual town meeting, with a focus on capital projects, reserves, and other one-time needs. Even after these appropriations, the town maintains a remaining balance consistent with the financial policy targets. The current certified number as of July of 2025 is approximately $15.7 million, with approximately $9.7 million planned for use at this town meeting. Now that we've looked at where the town's funding comes from, let's turn to how these resources are spent. This slide provides a high-level overview of how the town's total budget is allocated. As shown, the largest share of our spending, about 64%, goes towards operating budgets, which include both the school and municipal departments. These budgets provide for core services our residents rely on every day: education, public safety, public works, and community programs. Our goal is to maintain stability and predictability in operating budgets to support consistent service delivery year over year. The remaining portions include fixed costs such as employee benefits and insurance, sewer operations, debt service on previously approved capital projects, and our planned capital investments. This balanced approach ensures we meet both our short-term needs and long-term responsibilities. In summary, the FY27 budget is balanced and structurally sound, reflecting the town's continued commitment to responsible financial stewardship. It has been thoroughly reviewed and is recommended by both the Select Board and the Finance and Warrant Commission. It addresses rising cost pressures while carefully balancing needs across the operating budget. At the same time, it maintains the core services that residents rely on, with a focus on stability and continuity. Importantly, the town continues to maintain its strong financial position, with ongoing support for reserves and long-term obligations. The result is a budget that supports the needs of today while safeguarding the town's long-term stability. The remaining slides provide an overview of the financial articles included in this year's annual town meeting. These articles fall into several key categories. First are the annual budget adjustments, Articles 1, 2, and 14, which allow for closing out the current fiscal year. Article 3 is the FY27 operating budget, which supports the day-to-day municipal and school services discussed earlier. Additional detail is available in Appendix D of the town meeting book. Articles 4 through 9 relate to capital investments, including both base capital needs and supplemental projects funded through sources such as free cash and other dedicated revenues. Articles 10 and 12 continue our disciplined contributions to reserves, including the stabilization fund, the town's main savings account, and the OPEB trust fund to manage long-term retiree benefit obligations. In addition, there are a few specific articles, including a debt cleanup item related to previously authorized borrowing, a transfer to the Special Education Reserve Fund, and an appropriation for school litigation expenses. The next several slides will walk through these categories in more detail. Article 1 is a budget supplement to clean up the current fiscal year. It is one item that will transfer $405,000 from the Finance and Warrant Commission Reserve Fund to supplement and close out the snow and ice budget. The total amount in the FinCom reserve does not cover what is needed to close out this line, so there is also a request for snow and ice supplement funding in Article 2. Article 2 covers FY26 budget adjustments that require additional appropriations from available funds. We are requesting a total of $1,516,000 to fund the listed appropriations funded through free cash and ambulance receipts. The first two items are for the Police Department and Fire Department salary budgets. It is typical for the town to have a supplement in public safety budgets due to the nature of the operations of those departments and the fluctuations that occur throughout the year. The largest drivers for these personnel costs are related to contractual wage increases and long-term leave coverage. The additional costs of snow and ice operations are also included in this article. This has been a heavy year for snow events and the higher costs associated with needing to rely on both DPW staff during overtime and outside contractor support. The final item is a standard supplement to cover expenses for ambulance services and equipment in the amount of $196,000 funded with ambulance receipts. Article 3 is the main operating budget for both school and municipal services. For FY27, the proposed operating budget is $125.5 million, which is a 4.3% increase over the current year. As shown in the chart, the largest portion, $61.8 million, shown in blue, is allocated to schools, reflecting our continued investment in education. The municipal budget, shown in red, totals $27.4 million and supports a wide range of essential services from public safety to public works and community programs. Fixed costs, including employee benefits and insurance, make up $24.5 million and are shown in yellow, while debt service is $7.4 million, shown in green. When we reach Article 3 at town meeting, the town moderator will walk us through Appendix D for a more detailed line-by-line view. It's important to emphasize that passing the operating budget is essential to ensuring continuity of town services. Everything from keeping our schools running and roads maintained to paying our first responders and maintaining public facilities. Without an approved budget, the town cannot legally expend funds, which could disrupt services and daily operations. This article is the foundation of our financial plan for the coming year. The capital articles being presented reflect the town's ongoing commitment to maintaining and investing in our public buildings, infrastructure, and equipment. Articles 4 and 5 make up the base capital plan, totaling $1.83 million for municipal needs and $1.28 million for school needs, both funded with free cash. These are critical investments to preserve the value and functionality of town and school assets. In addition, we have a series of supplemental capital articles. Article 6 proposes $760,000 for sewer capital, funded from sewer retained earnings. Article 7 totals $2.4 million for various capital improvements funded by free cash. Article 8 includes $1.18 million of improvements funded by meals and hotel tax. And Article 9 includes items specific to ambulance capital improvements in the amount of $553,000, funded with ambulance receipts. A full list of the projects and items included in each article is detailed in the town meeting book. These investments are carefully planned, responsibly funded, and essential to the continued reliability and safety of town operations and have zero tax impact. Article 10 is the annual appropriation to the stabilization fund. This is the town's main savings account and is an important component of the credit rating we receive. The article asks to transfer $125,000 from free cash to the stabilization fund. This will help maintain the target balance in that account set by the town's financial policies. Article 11 relates to the Special Education Reserve Fund. During FY26, the school department utilized funds from this reserve to address higher than anticipated special education and transportation costs. This article replenishes that reserve in the amount of $680,000 using free cash, restoring the balance for future needs. Maintaining this reserve is an important part of managing the variability in special education costs from year to year. Article 12 is funding for the town's OPEB liability, the post-employment benefits for retirees. The annual appropriation into that account for FY27 is $1,615,000. We are currently on target for the funding plan. Both the stabilization fund and our work on the OPEB liability are important factors in the town keeping its AAA bond rating. Article 13 rescinds a portion of previously authorized but unused borrowing related to the Pine Hill Elementary School project. That project has been completed and the full borrowing authorization was not needed. As a result, this article reduces unused authorized debt by approximately $233,000 with no impact on services or taxes. This is a routine step that reflects responsible financial management and helps preserve future borrowing capacity. Article 14 is a supplemental appropriation to address current year FY26 budget needs. Specifically, it provides $345,000 from free cash to support higher than anticipated ABA and IA costs within the school department. This is part of the year-end process to ensure all obligations are fully funded. Article 15 is an appropriation of $435,000 from free cash to fund school department litigation expenses. This is a one-time cost and is being funded with free cash. Thank you all for your time, attention, and ongoing engagement in Westwood's financial planning. I hope this overview has been helpful in understanding both the town's strong financial position and the key articles you'll be voting on at this year's town meeting. Our goal is always to present information clearly, support transparency, and make it easier for residents to participate in these important decisions. Additional details can be found in the supplemental financial information section of the town meeting book and on the town's website. Thank you again for your interest and continued support.